I want to shift gears. We talked a lot about 7-Eleven, Blockbuster. Me and you had a really good conversation about that earlier, and in particular the kind of case study that was done about that. Yeah. Could you break that down again? I would love for you to talk about that, how the 4 different boxes that was checked between the content, the distribution, the exclusive. Could you talk about that again? On a lot of like we said earlier, right? A lot of people's favorite company was Blockbuster. What really happened to Blockbuster?
Yeah, I want to tell you because see, Jack thinks I'm the idiot that turned down Netflix. I know he said it. He whispered it. He was like, I think Jim turned down Netflix for $50 million. No, I'm just kidding, Jack. Don't worry. But it's the difference between perception and perspective. And if that's what you think, you miss one of the richest case studies and one of the most amazing business lessons that exist out there today. So here's what really happened. Netflix was doing DVDs by mail. Blockbuster was the preferred model of the studios. We were their cash cow. So they came to us and offered to sell us a streaming video company. It was called Movie Link. They had already digitized 3,000 titles.
This is the studios?
Studios did, yeah. Paramount, Sony, Warner, all came to us and said, buy this entity. They partnered on it to prevent the fragmentation that has happened today. They wanted to put all the digital content in one place to make it easy for the consumer and for them. And so we said, yes, we bought the entity. We bought a company called Movie Link. We changed the name to Blockbuster On Demand. And Netflix is still doing DVDs by mail at this point. Check one versus Netflix.
So you guys had the streaming before they did?
They were working on it. You may remember a little box called Roku that they were trying to get, but they had no content at all. So step 2, content. We're approached by Viacom, one of the big studios, former owner of Blockbuster, and they said, hey, we're going to package up all the long tail content. You've already got exclusivity on the new releases. We're going to package up all the old movies, streaming, and we'll grant you the rights. It was $100 million a year. It's a big ticket, but we'll grant Blockbuster the rights. Nobody else would have anything to stream. Blockbuster, HBO and Disney were going to be the only other content. Check 2. Third, Google approached us. They had just bought YouTube. Said, we're getting, studios are killing us because people they're posting up free content on YouTube, movie content. How about if we do a collaboration, distribution collaboration? YouTube, everything free. Blockbuster, everything paid. TV, movies, games, everything. Love it. My board signed it. It's in front of their board for the definitive agreement is in front of the Google board. Now, had we gotten that deal, check 3, checkmate. And if Reed Hastings was on this podcast, he'd go, yeah, we were dead. But here's what happened. 2008, Lehman Brothers collapses. The General Motors and Ford are going to the White House asking for a bailout. I wish I had a bailout. Nobody's going to give Blockbuster a bailout. We had $1 billion of debt. And the perception was we were going to file for bankruptcy. The article came out in the LA Times and the New York Post, Blockbuster about to file. And all of a sudden, I got a call from Google, deal's off. No distribution deal, can't justify $100 million exclusivity on content. Backed off. Netflix then acquired that content, not exclusively, but now they had something to stream. And the rest is history. We ultimately were forced into a restructuring. Still, I stayed the course, had to pivot from transforming the company now to saving the company. Took it through a restructuring, got it sold to Dish Networks, and we lived to see another day.
Where did all that debt come from originally? Was it from the rapid expansion of Blockbuster, or where did the debt come from?
Not at all. Viacom, I mentioned previously, had acquired the company. You remember the name Wayne Huizenga? Built Waste Management, and AutoNation, all these great. He was a great business guy. He's the one who really drove Blockbuster to be the company that it was. And so he sold the company for $8 billion to Viacom in, I think, 2000 and I'm not sure exactly. They ended up spinning it out into an IPO So returning Blockbuster to being a public company in 2004 and put $1 billion of debt on. Not an outrageous debt load, is probably 2% of EBITDA at the time, but dial forward, much of that debt was due 5 years later. The year, 2009. Third quarter of 2008, the whole financial market collapsed. Banks were shut. I got a third of $1 billion I've got to get refinanced. And that was what spooked my studios. And it wasn't even refinancing the debt that hurt Blockbuster. It was the fear of the studios that what if Blockbuster files? They took my credit terms from 90 days to cash. And that forced our hand.
How did you originally get connected to be the CEO of Blockbuster?
That's actually a fun story. I was out trying to buy the company because after a good run at 7-Eleven and knowing the power of technology, I was being approached by a lot of private equity firms saying, let's go buy something. Big private equity firms. So I said, okay.
And you would be the CEO of whatever company you bought?
Correct. And do a turnaround. And so I'm looking at, and I know this sounds crazy.
They're like, we need to take that Jim Key sauce over here, man.
Yeah, no, because it worked. It's 7-Eleven, and we had a good run. We had a 10x increase in equity value, and the private equity firms love that. So I was looking. I had two targets. I know this sounds crazy now. Radio Shack and Blockbuster. Remember those? Remember Radio Shack?
Yep, absolutely.
Think about Radio Shack. They're selling parts and pieces and all this stuff. But what people forget is they were the largest cell phone retailer in the world. AT&T stores, Verizon stores, those didn't exist back then. So here's Radio Shack with a corner on the cell phone business and the computer business. They were selling Dells and Lenovo's and they wouldn't sell Apple though. So I'm sitting here going, okay, they've got hardware. Blockbuster's got software, content. What if you bang these two together and every cell phone that we sell through this store, we sell with Blockbuster inside. Free streaming, and then we do pay-per-view on the new releases, just like we do in the stores. And we sell the devices out of both the Blockbuster store and the Radio Shack store. Bang the two together. Here's the way I looked at it. It was a technology-agnostic Apple store. If I carry a BlackBerry at the time and a Dell computer and a Sony TV, I can make them all talk. I'd put a person in every store, like a little mini Genius bar, and make it work. That was the vision. Private equity liked it. They said, "Yeah, we're gonna back you." And they took me on a road show. And on that road show, one of the potential investors picked up the phone and called Carl Icahn. And Carl was an existing investor in Blockbuster, and he said, Keys, just come, let's do this for Blockbuster. Forget about the Radio Shack thing for now. Let's turn around Blockbuster. We'll put this in place, and then we'll go buy Radio Shack later on. Trust me, you're an operator. I'm a financial guy. I got your back. And he did. Until he didn't.
For somebody that kind of is wanting to get into that acquisition game, like even whether it be buying massive companies like the big private equity companies that you're talking about, or even smaller size like multi-six-figure companies, seven-figure companies, somebody wants to get into kind of buying those companies, what are some things from your perspective, being that you've seen it from all ends of the spectrum, that would tell you to kind of avoid, whether it be going into that industry as a whole or just, like a particular company?
I don't think there is any such thing as a bad industry, because I think any industry can be transformed as long as they're willing to embrace change. What I'm looking for when I look at a company is have they been able to transform? Here's what happens. Blockbuster was the same. Radio Shack was the same. You get to a certain point and that fear creeps in and inertia creeps in. I call it big company disease. 7-Eleven had it. It's kind of what drove 7-Eleven into bankruptcy in the 90s. They just didn't want to change. To me, that is an absolute opportunity, because if a company hasn't embraced technology and their institutional culture is keeping them from changing, let me add it, because that's a great opportunity to bring technology to transform the culture and to leverage that, what could be a great brand, into something completely different. Look at Apple back in the day, right? I wouldn't have used a Mac for a doorstop in 1990. And now look at what happened. They reinvented the brand.
You mentioned how 7-Eleven went into bankruptcy in the 90s. Blockbuster was lacking innovation. Radio Shack lacking innovation. And there's companies even today that lack innovation. You know, I think there's a huge trend right now talking about the home service-based business, the boring business. And the reason there's such a big opportunity is because you can take a more traditional operator, an older operator, and implement technology and allow it to be a flourishing business, a more efficient business. If someone is a owner of a business today and they're starting to have that realization that, hey, what I'm doing today may not work 5 years from now, what would be your advice to them?
Bring in people that will challenge you. Because the problem isn't with the individual or even the leader often, especially, you said the magic words, they recognize that what got me here is not going to get me to the next level. If they're surrounded by people that are afraid and have that inertia, they're never going to get to the next level. So the best way to break that stalemate, if you will, culturally and organizationally, is have the confidence, again, back to that human resources thing.
You can't have the yes men around you.
Can't have the yes men, because they'll drag you right down. They'll yes you to death. And you've got to have people pushing you, making you uncomfortable, because that's when you learn.